The galaxy was vast, filled with billions of stars and countless planets. But lately, it wasn't the beauty of space that people talked about. It was the fear. Fear of something dark, something unstoppable. The Deathworld Alliance had been hearing whispers for months now. Whispers about a ship so dangerous, so monstrous that it left entire colonies in ruins. Its name? The Reaver. No one knew where it came from or why it attacked. All they knew was that wherever it went, death followed. Commander Liam Carter stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, the flagship of the Deathworld Alliance fleet. He stared out at the endless expanse of space, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. His mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. Reports were coming in faster than his crew could process them. Entire systems wiped out, billions dead, and no one had even seen the Reaver up close. It struck without warning, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. Liam turned to face Lieutenant Elena Grant, who sat at her station analyzing data streams from across the galaxy. She was young, maybe too young for such responsibility, but she had a sharp mind and an unshakable determination. Her fingers flew over the console as she worked, trying to piece together any clues about the mysterious ship. "Anything yet?" Liam asked, breaking the tense silence. Elena shook her head, her dark hair falling into her eyes. "Nothing solid," she replied. "But there's a pattern. It's hitting populated areas near resource-rich zones. Whatever it is, it's not random." Liam frowned. "That doesn't sound like some rogue AI or pirate raiders. This is calculated." Before Elena could respond, the comm system crackled to life. A voice came through, urgent and panicked. "Commander Carter, we've received another distress signal. Colony 427 has gone dark. Last transmission indicated massive destruction." Liam clenched his jaw. Another colony lost. Another failure on his watch. He glanced at Elena, whose expression mirrored his frustration. They needed answers, and fast. As if reading his thoughts, Elena spoke up. "Sir, I think I might have something. There's a faint energy signature trailing behind every attack site. It's faint, almost undetectable, but it matches patterns I've seen before in ancient alien artifacts." Liam raised an eyebrow. "Alien artifacts? You mean those old relics your team dug up last year?" She nodded. "Exactly. If this ship is using similar technology, then it's possible it's not just a machine. It could be alive." The room fell silent as everyone processed her words. Alive? The idea sent shivers down their spines. Machines were predictable. Living things were unpredictable. If the Reaver truly was alive, then defeating it would be nearly impossible. Just then, another message came through. But this one wasn't from within the Deathworld Alliance. It was from Earth. For decades, Earth had been considered a primitive world, barely scraping by after centuries of environmental collapse. But recently, rumors had spread about Earth rebuilding itself, developing advanced technology far beyond what anyone expected. The message played over the speakers. "This is General Daniel Hayes of Earth Defense Command. We are aware of the threat posed by the Reaver and stand ready to assist in neutralizing it. Our forces are mobilized, and our new prototype warship, the Eclipse Vanguard, is prepped for deployment." Liam exchanged glances with his officers. Earth? Helping them? Most dismissed the idea outright. Earth was weak, irrelevant. What could they possibly offer? But Elena leaned forward, intrigued. "General Hayes," she said into the mic, "can you provide more details about your ship?" There was a pause before Hayes responded. "The Eclipse Vanguard utilizes quantum propulsion and adaptive shielding, technology developed independently by our scientists. We believe it may give us an edge against the Reaver." Liam crossed his arms. Adaptive shielding sounded impressive, but he wasn't ready to trust Earth just yet. Still, he couldn't deny they needed help. Desperate times called for desperate measures. "We'll consider your offer," Liam said finally. "For now, send us your specs. Let's see what you're working with." Hours later, the data arrived. As Elena reviewed it, her eyes widened in disbelief. The Eclipse Vanguard was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Its capabilities surpassed even the best ships in the Deathworld Alliance fleet. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse Vanguard, Commander Ryan Brooks prepared his crew for battle. Tall and broad-shouldered, Ryan carried himself with quiet confidence. He had spent years training for moments like this, though he never imagined facing something as terrifying as the Reaver. Ryan studied the reports from the Deathworld Alliance, noting their skepticism toward Earth's involvement. He understood their hesitation. They didn't know him or his people. But Ryan also knew that pride wouldn't save them. Only cooperation would. As the Eclipse Vanguard approached the rendezvous point with the Deathworld Alliance fleet, Ryan addressed his crew. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady. "We're walking into a situation where trust is thin. They don't know us, and frankly, they don't want to. But we're here to do a job, to stop the Reaver. So let's show them what we're made of." Back on the Aegis Dawn, tensions simmered as the two factions met for the first time. General Hayes appeared via hologram, his stern face filling the screen. "We're here to help," he said bluntly. "But make no mistake, we're not here to take orders." Liam bristled at the comment but held his tongue. Now wasn't the time for arguments. Instead, he focused on the task ahead. Together they devised a plan to intercept the Reaver before it reached its next target, a densely populated trade hub. Elena volunteered to lead the reconnaissance mission aboard the stealth cruiser Shadow Strike. Ryan insisted on accompanying her, citing the importance of understanding the Reaver's behavior. Though reluctant to accept his help, Elena agreed, knowing they needed all the expertise they could get. As the Shadow Strike slipped silently through space, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Something about the Reaver unsettled her deeply. Was it really alive? And if so, how could they possibly defeat it? Her questions would soon have answers, but not the ones she hoped for. The Shadow Strike drifted silently through the void of space, its sleek hull blending seamlessly with the darkness. Elena sat at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls as she guided the ship closer to the Reaver. Beside her, Commander Ryan Brooks monitored the sensors, his sharp eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The tension in the cockpit was thick, almost suffocating. Neither of them spoke, there was no need. They both knew what was at stake. "Still nothing," Ryan muttered, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of frustration. "Are we sure this thing even exists?" Elena didn't answer right away. She adjusted the ship's scanners, narrowing their range to focus on a specific cluster of asteroids ahead. It was a risky move. Venturing too close could give away their position, but they had no other choice. If the Reaver was out there, hiding among the rocks, they needed to flush it out. "It's here," Elena said finally, her tone firm despite the knot of fear tightening in her stomach. "I can feel it." Ryan raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He'd learned quickly that Elena had a knack for intuition, and given the circumstances, he wasn't about to dismiss her instincts. Instead, he leaned forward, studying the readings on his screen more intently. Minutes passed like hours. The only sounds were the faint hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep of the instruments. Then, without warning, the sensors lit up. A massive energy spike erupted from behind one of the larger asteroids. It was moving at incredible speed. "There!" Ryan shouted, pointing to the display. "That's it!" Elena's heart pounded as she turned the Shadow Strike toward the source of the signal. What emerged from the shadows took her breath away. The Reaver wasn't just a ship, it was a monstrosity. Its surface shimmered and shifted, as if alive, constantly changing shape. Jagged spires jutted out from its hull, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. It looked less like a machine and more like some ancient predator, awakened after centuries of slumber. "What is that?" Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of static filling the comm channel. "I don't know," Elena replied, her hands trembling slightly on the controls, "but it's not natural." Before they could retreat, the Reaver reacted. In an instant, tendrils of energy shot out from its hull, lashing out like the tentacles of a deep-sea creature. One of them struck the Shadow Strike, sending shockwaves, rippling through the small vessel. Alarms blared as systems began to fail. "We're hit!" Ryan yelled, gripping the edge of his seat. "Shields are down to 30%. Elena fought to keep the ship steady, her mind racing. They hadn't come this far just to be destroyed. Not now. "Initiate evasive maneuvers," she ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to get out of range." The shadow strike twisted and turned, dodging another barrage of attacks. But the Reaver was relentless. It seemed to anticipate their every move, closing the distance between them with terrifying speed. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, a new signal appeared on the radar. "Someone's coming," Ryan said, his brow furrowing as he analyzed the incoming data. "Wait, it's Earth's ship. The Eclipse Vanguard." Relief washed over Elena, though she didn't let herself relax completely. She opened a communication channel. "Commander Brooks," she said, addressing Ryan by his title for clarity. "We need backup. Fast." "Already on it," Ryan replied, tapping rapidly at his console. Within moments, the Eclipse Vanguard burst into view, its sleek design cutting through the chaos like a blade. The ship unleashed a volley of plasma torpedoes, forcing the Reaver to break off its attack on the shadow strike. Elena watched in awe as the Eclipse Vanguard engaged the monstrous ship. Its adaptive shielding glowed brightly, deflecting blow after blow with ease. For the first time, the Reaver seemed hesitant, unsure how to counter such advanced technology. "Earth's got some tricks up their sleeve," Ryan commented, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "Let's see how long that thing lasts against us." As the battle raged on, Elena couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Gratitude warred with resentment. Earth had saved them. That much was undeniable. But part of her resented needing their help in the first place. The Deathworld Alliance had always prided itself on being self-reliant. Now they were reduced to relying on outsiders. When the Reaver finally retreated, disappearing into the depths of space, the crew of the Shadow Strike let out a collective sigh of relief. The immediate danger had passed, but Elena knew this was far from over. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, the mood was tense. General Hayes and Captain Liam Carter convened in the war room, along with representatives from both Earth and the Deathworld Alliance. The atmosphere was charged with suspicion and mistrust. Many within the Alliance viewed Earth's intervention as an act of arrogance, while others saw it as proof that humanity was stronger than anyone realized. "This changes everything," Liam said, pacing back and forth. "If Earth has ships like the Eclipse Vanguard, why haven't we heard about them before?" Hayes crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "Because we didn't need to show our hand until now. Frankly, I'm surprised you lasted this long without us." His words ignited a spark of anger in Liam, but he bit back a retort. Arguing wouldn't solve anything, not when the galaxy was teetering on the brink of annihilation. Elena entered the room, her presence drawing everyone's attention. She carried a datapad filled with information gathered during their encounter with the Reaver. Setting it down on the table, she began explaining what they had discovered. "The Reaver isn't just a weapon," she said, her voice clear and authoritative. "It's intelligent, maybe even sentient. Its movements suggest it adapts based on its opponent's tactics. That's why it's so hard to fight. And yet your ship managed to drive it off," one of the Alliance officers remarked, eyeing Ryan skeptically. "How?" Ryan stepped forward, meeting the man's gaze head-on. "Because we came prepared. Our technology is designed to adapt, just like the Reaver. If you want to stand a chance against it, you'll have to trust us." Trust. The word hung heavy in the air. Trust was a luxury neither side could afford, not when lives were on the line. Yet as much as the Deathworld Alliance hated to admit it, they needed Earth. And Earth, for all its newfound strength, couldn't face the Reaver alone. Liam sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "We'll work together. But if this goes south, I'm holding you personally responsible." Hayes nodded, unfazed by the threat. "Fair enough." Over the next few days, the two factions worked side by side, sharing resources and strategies. Elena collaborated closely with Ryan, analyzing data and running simulations to better understand the Reaver. Despite their initial reservations, they found themselves growing to respect each other's skills. Elena admired Ryan's pragmatism, while Ryan appreciated Elena's creativity and determination. But not everyone shared their camaraderie. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Some members of the Deathworld Alliance openly mocked Earth's contributions, dismissing them as lucky breaks. Others whispered about seizing control of the Eclipse Vanguard and using its technology for themselves. One night, as Elena reviewed the latest intel in her quarters, there was a knock at the door. She glanced up to see Ryan standing there, looking unusually serious. "We've got a problem," he said, stepping inside. "Some of your people are planning something dangerous." Elena frowned, setting down her tablet. "What kind of something?" "They think they can take the Eclipse Vanguard," Ryan explained. "Force us to hand over the keys, so to speak." Her blood ran cold. "They wouldn't dare." "They would," Ryan countered. "And if they succeed, the Reaver will crush them. You know that." Elena nodded slowly, her mind racing. She trusted Liam to maintain order, but even he might not be able to stop a rogue faction within the Alliance. This wasn't just about pride anymore, it was about survival. "We'll have to act fast," she said finally. "If we can prove that cooperation is the only way forward, maybe we can prevent this before it starts." Ryan gave her a grim smile. "Then let's get to work." Together, they devised a plan to present irrefutable evidence of the Reaver, his capabilities during the next strategy meeting. Using footage from their earlier encounter combined with simulations showing the futility of attacking it alone, they hoped to convince the doubters once and for all. As dawn broke over the bay, fleet Elena felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but for the first time she believed they might actually stand a chance. With Earth and the Deathworld Alliance working together, perhaps they could turn the tide against the Reaver. But deep down, she knew the hardest battles were still to come. The meeting room aboard the Aegis Dawn buzzed with tension as representatives from Earth and the Deathworld Alliance gathered to discuss their next move. The air was thick with distrust, and the mood was anything but cooperative. General Hayes sat at the head of the table, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Captain Liam Carter paced behind him, clearly agitated. Between them stood Elena and Ryan, who had spent hours preparing for this moment. Elena placed a small device on the table and pressed a button. A holographic display lit up, showing footage of their encounter with the Reaver. The monstrous ship loomed large in the projection, its shifting surface glowing ominously. Gasps rippled through the room as those watching saw just how powerful and terrifying it truly was. "This is what we're up against," Elena began, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "As you can see, the Reaver adapts. To every attack, it learns, it evolves. That's why conventional tactics won't work." Ryan stepped forward, taking over seamlessly. "But if we combine our resources, Earth's technology and the Deathworld Alliance's experience, we might stand a chance. Alone, neither of us has the tools to stop it." A murmur spread among the attendees. Some nodded reluctantly while others exchanged skeptical glances. One officer from the Alliance, a burly man named Commander Victor Hale, leaned forward with a scowl. "And why should we trust you?" he demanded, pointing an accusatory finger at Ryan. "You show up out of nowhere, flashing your fancy ship and expect us to follow your lead. What makes you think we need Earth's help?" Ryan met his gaze without flinching. "Because without us, you'll lose. Again, and again, until there's nothing left." The room fell silent. No one could deny the truth in his words. The Deathworld Alliance had suffered defeat after defeat at the hands of the Reaver, and pride wouldn't change that fact. Still, the idea of relying on Earth stung deeply. Liam stepped in before the argument escalated further. "Enough," he said firmly. "We don't have time for this. If we want to survive, we need to put aside our differences and focus on what matters: stopping the Reaver." Hayes nodded in agreement. "Captain Carter is right. This isn't about who's stronger or smarter. It's about survival. Now, are we going to fight each other? Or are we going to fight the real enemy? Reluctantly, the group turned their attention back to the hologram. Elena continued explaining their findings, highlighting key moments from the battle. She pointed out how the Reaver seemed to anticipate their moves, almost as if it could read their minds. Then she showed simulations based on their data, demonstrating how different strategies would play out against the ship. Every scenario ended the same way: failure. There's only one approach that gives us even a slim chance, Elena concluded. We need to draw the Reaver into a trap, a coordinated ambush using both fleets, but it'll require perfect timing and absolute trust between us. Commander Hale scoffed. Trust? You really think we're going to hand over command of our fleet to Earth? No one's asking for control, Ryan replied sharply. We're offering partnership. Your ships provide the numbers. Ours provides the firepower. Together, we create a force strong enough to take it down. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Finally, Liam broke the silence. I'll agree to this plan, but only under one condition. Earth leads the charge. If your ship is as good as you claim, then prove it. Lead us into battle and we'll follow. Hayes hesitated, exchanging a glance with Ryan. It was a risky proposition. If the plan failed, Earth would bear the blame. But they didn't have a choice. Time was running out. Agreed, Hayes said finally. But remember this. If we succeed, it's because we work together, not because one side saved the other. With the plan set, preparations began immediately. The combined fleets regrouped, near the edge of the system, positioning themselves strategically around the predicted path of the Reaver. Morale was low, but there was a sense of determination in the air. Everyone knew what was at stake. Back on the Eclipse Vanguard, Ryan briefed his crew on the mission. He walked among them, speaking in a calm, yet authoritative tone. This isn't just about winning a battle, he told them. It's about proving that humanity can rise above division and face threats together. We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Let's make sure we deliver. Meanwhile, Elena worked tirelessly alongside her team, refining the calculations for the ambush. Despite the mounting pressure, she found herself forming a bond with Ryan. Their shared goal had brought them closer, and though neither would admit it, they respected each other deeply. As the hours ticked by, reports came in confirming the Reaver's approach. It was heading straight for a mining colony, likely targeting its rich deposits of rare minerals. The colony's fate rested entirely on the success of the upcoming battle. On the eve of the operation, Elena found herself alone in the observation deck of the Aegis Dawn. Staring out at the endless expanse of stars, she felt a mix of fear and resolve. She thought about all the lives lost already, all the families torn apart by the Reaver. This couldn't continue. They had to win. Ryan joined her a few minutes later, standing quietly beside her. Neither spoke for a while, content to simply share the silence. Finally, Ryan broke it. You okay? Elena nodded, though her expression remained troubled. I keep thinking about everyone we've lost, about how many more will die if we fail. We won't fail, Ryan said firmly. Not if I have anything to say about it. She looked at him, seeing the determination in his eyes. For the first time since this nightmare began, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could pull it off. The next morning, the fleets moved into position. The Eclipse Vanguard led the formation, its advanced sensors scanning for any sign of the Reaver. Tension crackled through the ranks as everyone waited for the signal to engage. Then, suddenly, it appeared. The Reaver emerged from hyperspace, its massive form casting a shadow over the battlefield. It paused for a moment, as if sensing the trap. Then, with terrifying speed, it charged forward. All ships fire at will, Ryan shouted over the comm channel. The combined fleet unleashed a barrage of weapons, lighting up space with explosions. Plasma torpedoes and energy beams streaked toward the Reaver, striking its hull repeatedly. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might actually be winning. But the Reaver wasn't done yet. With a deafening roar, it retaliated, unleashing a wave of destructive energy that tore through the fleet. Ships exploded left and right, sending debris spiraling into the void. Chaos erupted as communication lines flooded with panicked voices. "Hold the line," Liam commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. "Stick to the plan." Elena watched, in horror as ship after ship fell victim to the Reavers' relentless assault. Her heart sank when she saw the Aegis Dawn take a direct hit, forcing it to retreat from the fight. Without its leadership, the fleet risked falling into disarray. Ryan barked orders to his crew, guiding the Eclipse Vanguard into the heart of the battle. Its adaptive shielding held firm, deflecting blow after blow. But even the most advanced technology had its limits. "Shields are down to 40%, one of the engineers called out. "We can't keep this up much longer." Ryan clenched, his fists, his mind racing. They needed a miracle, and fast. Then inspiration struck. Turning to Elena, who was monitoring the situation from her station, he asked, "Can we overload its core, force it to self-destruct?" Elena's eyes widened. "It's possible, but someone would have to get close enough to plant the charges, and they'd never make it out alive." Ryan nodded grimly. "Then we'll do it remotely. Use drones to deliver the payload." Without hesitation, Elena sprang into action, coordinating with the engineering team to modify several repair drones for the task. As they worked, Ryan maneuvered the Eclipse Vanguard closer to the Reaver, drawing its attention away from the rest of the fleet. Finally, the drones were ready. With a deep breath, Elena launched them, guiding them carefully toward the Reaver's core. The seconds felt like hours as they approached their target. Then, with a final burst of speed, the drones attached themselves to the ship's hull and detonated. A blinding flash of light filled the battlefield as the Reaver convulsed violently. For a moment, it seemed like the monster might survive. But then, with a deafening boom, it collapsed in on itself, consumed by its own power. Cheers erupted across the fleet as the threat was neutralized. Exhausted but victorious, the survivors began tending to the wounded and salvaging what remained of their forces. In the aftermath, Elena and Ryan stood side by side, watching as the debris of the Reaver drifted silently through space. They had done it. Against all odds, they had succeeded. But as they gazed at the wreckage, both knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and dangers lurked in every corner. Yet for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet triumph. Together, they had faced the impossible and won. The victory over the Reaver was short-lived. While the monstrous ship had been destroyed, the cost of the battle weighed heavily on everyone. The combined fleets limped back to a nearby space station for repairs, their ships battered and crews exhausted. The Deathworld Alliance had lost nearly half its fleet, and Earth's forces weren't faring much better. Morale was at an all-time low, and tensions between the two factions began to rise again. On the Eclipse Vanguard, Commander Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge, staring out at the damaged ships drifting through space. His crew worked tirelessly to patch up the holes in their own vessel, but even with adaptive shielding, the Vanguard hadn't escaped unscathed. Parts of the hull were scorched black, and several systems were still offline. Despite the physical damage, it was the emotional toll that worried Ryan most. He could see it in his crew's eyes: fatigue, grief, and anger. Elena Grant joined him a few minutes later, her expression grim. She carried a datapad filled with casualty reports, her hands trembling slightly as she handed it to him. "We've counted the losses," she said quietly. "Over 10,000 dead, most of them from the Alliance." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "And how many more will die if we don't figure out what the Reaver really was, or who sent it?" Elena nodded. That question had been haunting her ever since the battle ended. The Reaver hadn't acted like a mindless weapon. It had seemed almost purposeful. Its movements were too precise, its attacks too calculated. If they didn't uncover its origin soon, there was no guarantee another wouldn't appear. General Hayes called an emergency meeting aboard the Aegis Dawn, now docked at the space station. Captain Liam Carter sat beside him, his face pale and drawn. Though he'd survived the battle, the strain of leadership was etched into every line of his face. Around the table, officers from both Earth and the Deathworld Alliance exchanged wary glances. Trust was fragile, and tempers were running high. "We need answers," Hayes began, his voice firm despite the weariness in his eyes. "Destroying the Reaver was a start, but it doesn't solve the bigger problem. Where did it come from? Who built it? And why did it attack us?" Commander Victor Hale, the outspoken critic of Earth's involvement, slammed his fist on the table. "That's easy enough to answer. It came from Earth. You think we're stupid? Your so-called prototype technology looks suspiciously similar to what the Reaver used." The room erupted into chaos as accusations flew back and forth. Elena tried to intervene, holding up the datapad with their findings. "That's not true," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "The energy signatures are completely different. The Reaver's tech is ancient, far older than anything Earth has developed," Hale sneered at her. "Convenient excuse. Maybe you're just covering for your precious allies." Ryan stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "If we wanted to destroy you, we wouldn't have saved your fleet back there. We're here because we want to help, not because we have something to hide." Liam raised his hand, silencing the argument before it escalated further. "Enough. Arguing isn't going to bring back the dead or stop whatever comes next. Right now, we need to focus on finding answers." Elena seized the opportunity to present her theory. She activated the holographic display once more, showing images of the Reaver's remains. "Based on our analysis, this ship wasn't built by humans or any known species. Its design matches patterns found in artifacts from a long-extinct alien civilization. My team studied these relics years ago, but we never imagined anyone would revive their technology." Hayes leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Are you saying someone dug up ancient tech and turned it into a weapon?" "Exactly," Elena replied. "But whoever did it must have had access to advanced knowledge and resources. This wasn't some rogue scientist working alone. It was organized. Planned." Liam frowned. "Then we're dealing with more than just one ship. If this group can build something like the Reaver, they'll do it again." The gravity of the situation settled over the room like a thick fog. They had stopped one threat, but the war was far from over. The question now was, where to begin? Back on the Eclipse, Vanguard Ryan and Elena pored over the data, searching for any clue that might lead them to the architects of the Reaver. Hours turned into days as they sifted through fragments of information, piecing together a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. Finally, they stumbled upon something promising, a faint signal embedded in the Reaver's wreckage. It was faint, almost undetectable, but it matched coordinates pointing to a remote sector of the galaxy. "This could be it," Elena said, her voice tinged with excitement. "Whoever built the Reaver might have left behind traces of their operation. If we follow this signal, we might find them." Ryan hesitated. "It's risky. We don't know what's waiting for us out there. What if it's a trap?" "It's a chance we have to take," Elena insisted. "If we don't act now, we'll lose the trail and maybe our only shot at stopping them." After consulting with General Hayes and Captain Carter, they agreed to send a small reconnaissance team to investigate. Ryan volunteered to lead the mission, knowing the risks involved. Elena insisted on joining him, arguing that her expertise would be crucial. Reluctantly, Ryan agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he was putting her in danger. The team consisted of 6 members: Ryan, Elena, medic Samantha Cole, engineer Jake Monroe, pilot Alex Reed, and security officer Marcus Kane. Together, they boarded a modified scout ship, the Phoenix Blade, designed for stealth and speed. As they prepared to depart, Liam approached Ryan with a solemn expression. "Bring her back," he said simply, nodding toward Elena. "She's one of ours." Ryan met his gaze steadily. "I'll do everything I can." The journey to the coordinates took several days, during which the crew remained on edge. They knew they were venturing into uncharted territory, stepping into the unknown. When they finally arrived, they discovered a desolate planet orbiting a dying star. Its surface was barren, covered in jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. But buried beneath the surface lay something extraordinary, a massive underground facility, using thermal imaging. They located an entrance hidden beneath a layer of rock. Donning environmental suits, The team descended into the depths of the planet. The air inside the facility was cold and stale, carrying the faint scent of decay. The walls were lined with strange symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. It was clear this place had been abandoned for centuries, but not before someone had used it for their own purposes. As they explored deeper, they found evidence of recent activity. Tools and equipment littered the floors, along with discarded components bearing eerie similarities to the Reaver's design. In the central chamber, they discovered a massive console surrounded by monitors displaying cryptic data streams. Elena immediately set to work deciphering the information, her fingers flying over the controls. "This is it," she murmured, her voice filled with awe. "This is where they built the Reaver. Whoever they are, they've been planning this for a long time." Before she could continue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, illuminating the dark corridors. "We've triggered something," Ryan said sharply. "Move out, now!" The team sprinted toward the exit, but they weren't alone. From the shadows emerged humanoid figures clad in sleek armor, their faces obscured by helmets. They moved, with mechanical precision, weapons trained on the intruders. "Hostiles!" Marcus shouted, raising his rifle. "Take cover!" A fierce firefight erupted, echoing through the narrow tunnels. The enemy fighters were relentless, forcing the team to retreat deeper into the facility. As they fought their way back, Jake spotted a control panel near the entrance. "I can seal the doors," he yelled, "but I'll need a minute." "Do it," Ryan ordered, firing off a burst of shots to hold off their pursuers. Jake worked, frantically, sweat dripping down his face. Just as the enemy closed in, the heavy blast doors slammed shut, sealing them off. For a moment, the team caught their breath, leaning against the walls as adrenaline coursed through their veins. "We're trapped," Samantha whispered, her voice trembling. "They'll find another way in." "No, they won't," Elena said suddenly, her eyes widening. "Look." She pointed to the monitors, which displayed a countdown timer ticking down rapidly. They activated a self-destruct sequence. "This whole place is going to blow." Panic gripped the group as they realized the severity of the situation. There was no time to waste. Ryan barked orders, leading them toward the surface as fast as possible. Behind them, explosions began rocking the facility, shaking the ground beneath their feet. When they finally reached the surface, the Phoenix Blade was waiting, engines roaring to life. Alex piloted the ship upward just as the facility collapsed in a fiery eruption below. Safe, for now, they watched as the planet disappeared behind them, swallowed by the vastness of space. Though shaken, the team knew they had uncovered vital information. Someone, or something, was building weapons like the Reaver, and they were closer to the truth than ever before. But as Ryan glanced at Elena, he couldn't help but wonder, how much longer could they keep running before the next threat found them? The Phoenix Blade streaked through the void of space, its engines humming steadily as the crew aboard tried to process what they had just experienced. The underground facility was gone, reduced to rubble by its own self-destruct mechanism. But the data Elena had managed to salvage before their narrow escape painted a chilling picture. Whoever or whatever had built the Reaver was not only advanced but also deeply organized. They weren't dealing with rogue actors or scattered remnants of an ancient civilization. This was something far more sinister, a coordinated effort to create weapons capable of wiping out entire worlds. Elena sat in the cramped cockpit, her eyes glued to the small screen displaying the decrypted files. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, piecing together fragments of information. Beside her, Ryan monitored the ship's trajectory, occasionally glancing at her with concern. He could see the exhaustion etched on her face, but she refused to rest until they understood the full scope of the threat. "What did you find?" Ryan finally asked, breaking the silence. Elena hesitated, her fingers pausing for a moment before resuming their work. "It's worse than we thought," she admitted. "This wasn't just one project. There are references here to multiple sites, other facilities spread across the galaxy. Each one seems to focus on different aspects of weapon development." Ryan frowned. "So the Reaver wasn't unique?" "No," Elena replied grimly. "It was part of a larger network. And if even one of these sites is operational, it means there could be more ships like it already out there, or being built right now. The implications were staggering. If the enemy had the resources to construct multiple versions of the Reaver, then destroying the first one had been little more than a temporary victory. The real battle was only beginning. As the Phoenix Blade approached the rendezvous point, with the fleet, the team prepared to share their findings. Samantha, the medic, tended to minor injuries sustained during the firefight, while Jake tinkered with the ship's systems to ensure everything was functioning properly. Marcus stood guard near the airlock, his rifle slung across his chest, ready for anything. Despite their survival, none of them felt safe, not after what they'd seen. When they docked with the Aegis Dawn, Captain Liam Carter and General Hayes were waiting. Their expressions were grave, mirroring the tension that filled the air. Without wasting time, Elena led them to the briefing room, where she projected the recovered data onto a large screen. The symbols and schematics flickered to life, revealing the extent of the operation. "This is bad," Hayes muttered, rubbing his temples. "We took down one monster and now we're looking at an army." Liam crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. "Do we know who's behind this? Any leads on who's running these facilities?" Elena shook her head. "Not yet. The records are fragmented and most of the identifying details have been erased. But based on the design patterns, I think we're dealing with someone who's studied ancient alien tech extensively. Maybe even someone within the Deathworld Alliance itself." Her words sent a ripple of unease through the room. The idea that the enemy might come from within their own ranks was unsettling and dangerous. Accusations would fly, alliances would crumble, and chaos would ensue. Yet Elena knew she couldn't sugarcoat the truth. If they were going to stop this threat, they needed to face every possibility. Hayes leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "If there's a traitor among us, we'll root them out. But first, we need to deal with these other facilities." "How many are there?" "At least 5, Elena answered. "Maybe more. Some of the coordinates are incomplete, so we can't pinpoint their exact locations yet." "That's enough to start with," Ryan interjected. "We hit them hard and fast before they realize we know about them. Take out their production lines and we cut off the supply of new threats." Liam nodded slowly. "Agreed, but we'll need precision. We can't afford another massacre like the last battle. Every move has to count." With the plan set, the fleet split into smaller strike teams, each assigned to investigate one of the suspected locations. The Eclipse Vanguard would lead the charge, supported by the remaining ships of the Deathworld Alliance. Trust between the two factions remained fragile, but necessity forced cooperation. They all knew failure wasn't an option. Elena insisted on joining Ryan's team, arguing that her knowledge of the enemy's technology made her indispensable. Reluctantly, he agreed, though he privately worried about putting her in harm's way again. Still, he couldn't deny her value, or her determination. The first target was a remote asteroid base located on the edge of a volatile star cluster. Scans suggested it housed a research lab dedicated to developing new forms of artificial intelligence. If true, it meant the enemy wasn't just building machines. They were creating sentient beings designed specifically for destruction. As the ER strike team approached the base, Ryan addressed his crew over the comm channel. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the mission. "We don't know what's waiting for us inside. Stay sharp, stay close, and follow orders. Our objective is simple: shut it down. No matter what happens, we don't leave until the job is done." The team disembarked from the Phoenix Blade, their boots crunching against the rough surface of the asteroid. The base loomed ahead, its metallic structure blending seamlessly with the surrounding rocks. It looked abandoned, almost peaceful, but appearances could be deceiving. Inside, the corridors were eerily quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows along the walls. The air smelled faintly of ozone, a telltale sign of active machinery. As they moved deeper into the facility, they began encountering signs of recent activity. Discarded tools, half-finished prototypes, and monitors displaying streams of incomprehensible code. "This place is alive," Elena whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "Whatever they were working on, it's still running." Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a deafening screech. From the shadows emerged humanoid figures, their bodies sleek and metallic, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They weren't fully organic or fully machine. They were hybrids, fusions of flesh and steel, moving with terrifying speed and precision. "Hostiles," Marcus shouted, raising his weapon. "Open fire!" The battle was fierce and chaotic. The hybrid creatures attacked without hesitation, their movements fluid and unpredictable. Bullets ricocheted off their armored exteriors, forcing the team to adapt their tactics. Samantha threw smoke grenades to disorient the enemy, while Jake used his engineering skills to disable security systems blocking their path. Through it all, Elena focused on finding the central core, the heart of the HFY facility's operations. She knew that destroying it would cripple the base and halt whatever experiments were underway. With Ryan covering her back, she navigated the labyrinthine corridors, following the faint hum of energy emanating from deep within the complex. Finally, they reached a massive chamber dominated by a towering machine pulsating with blue light. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting the core to countless smaller devices scattered throughout the room. It was unlike anything Elena had ever seen, a grotesque fusion of biology and technology, throbbing with malevolent energy. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "If we destroy this, we take the whole place down." Ryan nodded. "Do it, but hurry, we're running out of time." Elena worked quickly, planting explosive charges around the core. As she finished, the ground shook violently, and alarms blared. The enemy had detected their presence and was mobilizing reinforcements. "We need to go," Ryan yelled, grabbing her arm. But Elena hesitated. Something about the core drew her in, compelling her to look closer. Embedded in its surface were symbols identical to those found in the ancient artifacts she had studied years ago. Symbols that told a story, one of creation, corruption, and ultimate destruction. Before she could process the implications, Marcus appeared in the doorway, shouting urgently, "They're coming, we have to move." Reluctantly, Elena turned away, following Ryan and the others as they sprinted toward the exit. Behind them, the core began to destabilize, its glow intensifying with each passing second. By the time they reached the surface, the entire facility was collapsing in on itself, consumed by a fiery explosion that lit up the dark expanse of space. Back aboard the Phoenix Blade, the team watched silently as the asteroid disappeared in a burst of light. They had succeeded in neutralizing one threat, but the war was far from over. 4 more facilities remained, each potentially harboring horrors beyond imagination. As Elena stared at the stars outside the viewport, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing a game they didn't fully understand. Who or what was truly behind this? And how far would they have to go to stop it? For now, though, they had won a small victory. Together, they had faced the impossible and survived. But as Ryan glanced at her, he knew the hardest battles were still to come. The fleet regrouped at a safe distance from the asteroid base, its destruction visible as a faint glow fading into the void of space. The victory was bittersweet. They had stopped one facility, but 4 others remained. Each mission brought new dangers, and the toll on the crew was mounting. Exhaustion lingered in every corner of the ships, yet there was no time to rest. Every moment spent idle gave the enemy more time to prepare. Elena sat in the war room aboard the Aegis Dawn, surrounded by maps and data projections. Her mind raced as she analyzed patterns in the recovered intelligence. The facilities were spread across the galaxy, their locations seemingly random. But Elena noticed something, a subtle alignment. It wasn't geographical or logistical, it was symbolic. The coordinates matched constellations tied to ancient myths about creation and destruction. "This isn't just about building weapons," she said aloud, her voice low but urgent. "It's about rewriting the rules of existence." Ryan, who had been leaning against the wall, straightened up. "What do you mean?" Elena turned to face him, her expression grim. "Whoever is behind this isn't just trying to conquer. They're trying to remake the universe in their image. These facilities aren't factories, they're temples. They're using ancient knowledge to summon something. Liam Carter entered the room, his brow furrowed. Summon what? Another ship like the Reaver? No, Elena replied. Something bigger. Something we can't even comprehend. Her words sent a chill through the room. General Hayes stepped forward, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. If that's true, then we're not just fighting an enemy. We're fighting a force that could wipe out everything. We need to act fast. The decision was made. Split the fleet into two groups. One would focus on destroying the remaining facilities, while the other sought answers about the mastermind orchestrating the attacks. Ryan volunteered to lead the strike team targeting the next facility, while Elena insisted on joining Liam and Hayes to investigate the source of the operation. Second facility was located on a moon orbiting a gas giant, its surface cloaked in thick toxic clouds. As the Phoenix blade descended, the team braced themselves for another brutal fight. But when they landed, they found the place eerily empty. No guards, no hybrid creatures, just rows of dormant machinery humming softly. It's a trap, Marcus muttered, gripping his rifle tighter. Elena ignored him, moving toward a central console glowing faintly in the dim light. She interfaced her datapad with the system, downloading files as quickly as possible. What she uncovered chilled her to the bone. The facility wasn't abandoned, it was waiting for activation signals from a central hub. We need to find that hub, she said, turning to Ryan. This entire network is controlled from somewhere else. If we destroy the hub, we shut down all the facilities at once. Ryan nodded. Then let's move. But keep your eyes open. This quiet feels wrong. They pressed deeper into the facility, navigating narrow corridors lined with strange glyphs. The air grew colder, and the hum of machinery faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. Then, without warning, the walls began to shift. Panels slid open, revealing hidden chambers filled with grotesque experiments, half-formed hybrids suspended in tanks of liquid, their distorted faces frozen in silent agony. Samantha gagged, covering her mouth with her hand. What kind of monsters are we dealing with? Before anyone could answer, the ground trembled violently. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the halls, speaking in a language none of them understood. Yet somehow they felt its meaning, a promise of annihilation. They know we're here, Jake whispered, his voice trembling. Fall back, Ryan shouted, motioning for the team to retreat. But it was too late. The walls sealed shut, trapping them inside. The voice grew louder, accompanied by the sound of metal grinding against metal. From the shadows emerged a massive figure, a towering hybrid unlike any they had encountered before. Its body was a patchwork of flesh and steel, its eyes burning with an otherworldly light. Marcus fired first, his shots ricocheting harmlessly off its armored skin. The creature roared, charging forward with terrifying speed. The team scattered, taking cover behind debris as they tried to formulate a plan. Elena spotted a control panel near the ceiling and pointed it out to Ryan. If I can overload the power grid, it might destabilize the structure. Go, Ryan yelled, laying down suppressive fire. We'll hold it off. With Jake's help, Elena climbed onto a pile of crates and accessed the panel. Her fingers flew over the controls as alarms blared around her. Behind her, the team fought desperately, their ammunition running dangerously low. Just as the creature closed in on them, the lights flickered, and the ground shook violently. Get down! Elena screamed, leaping off the crates as the facility collapsed. The team barely escaped, sprinting through collapsing tunnels as explosions rocked the structure. When they finally reached the surface, the moon's horizon glowed orange as the facility imploded beneath them. Meanwhile, Liam, Hayes, and Elena followed the trail of clues left behind by the enemy. Their journey led them to a derelict space station orbiting a dying star. The station was ancient, its design matching the same alien architecture seen in the artifacts. Inside, they discovered records detailing the rise of a long-forgotten empire, one that had harnessed forbidden technologies to achieve godlike power. At the heart of the station lay a chamber containing a holographic projection of a shadowy figure. Its voice spoke directly to them, taunting and cold. "You cannot stop what has already begun. The cycle must continue." Elena recognized the symbols surrounding the projection. "This is it," she said. "This is the source. Whoever, or whatever this is, it's controlling everything." Hayes clenched his fists. "Then we ended here. Using explosives, they destroyed the projection and the systems powering it. As the station crumbled around them, they made their escape, watching from the safety of their ship as the last remnants of the enemy's influence disintegrated into nothingness. Back aboard the combined fleet, the survivors gathered to mourn their losses and celebrate their hard-won victory. Though battered and weary, they stood united. For the first time, Earth and the Deathworld Alliance truly saw themselves as allies, bound together by shared sacrifice and hope for the future. Elena gazed out at the stars, her thoughts heavy but resolute. The immediate threat was gone, but she knew the galaxy still held countless mysteries and dangers. Beside her, Ryan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We did it," he said softly. "But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "And we'll face whatever comes next. Together." As the fleet set course for home, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before them, filled with both promise and peril. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of peace, knowing they had faced the impossible and prevailed.